It's almost impossible to succeed without it unless you get lucky. I mean, that's the baseline number one. The analogy I always use for this is if Lee and I sat down and Lee said, "Hey Kev, I'll give you $1 million if you can do the splits." I would say, I might try for $1 million. I might give it a try, but I'm going to need some rehab after that. But if I said, "What about 500,000? So I'll save you $500,000. What if I can do the splits at this time next year? Will you give me $500,000?" Two things. One, you're probably going to say no because that's a long way away. But two, if I practice every day for the next 365 days consistently, why can't I do the splits?
Mm.
But if I say, all right, so there's 12 months, I'll practice twice a month. That's only 24 reps. That's not going to be enough. 24 versus 365. So that's a piece of it, right? You're more likely to accomplish something if you do it longer and more intentionally than everyone else. And then I think the big thing that doesn't get touched on as much because it's not necessarily as sexy when it comes to consistency, you're going to learn exponentially more lessons the more consistent you are. So as a podcaster, I've done over 2,000 episodes between our show and other shows, and I've done that consistently over the past 6 years. I just have way more losses, lessons, experiences, perspective, just based on the fact that when you get through level 1, you have lessons from level 1. You might not use those lessons in level 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. You might use them later. But if you're not consistent, you never get to actually use those powerful lessons you've learned. So consistency becomes a multiplier later. It just takes a long, long, long time. And then here's the last thing. I have talked to many humans about being consistent, and oftentimes they say, well, I'm just not consistent. That's not true. If you weren't consistent, you wouldn't end up gaining 10 pounds a year. You're just consistently overeating. If you weren't consistent, you wouldn't go to bed angry 3 times a week with your partner. You are consistent. It's just maybe in a detrimental direction. So I think that's an important understanding too, is it's not that you're not consistent. You're just not necessarily consistent in the optimal way to get you the actual results you want. And I think that can be an empowering belief if you use it correctly.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying there. So you can be consistent in alignment with your goals, or you could be consistent in moving away from your goals.
Yeah.
You can't really be in between. It's kind of one or the other.
Yeah, I don't think life has a maintenance mode. Because by definition, time is going by, which means you're either improving or going backwards in a way. Right? If I'm 34 years of age as of now, if I stop doing the level of fitness that I did to get me here, it's going to start trending down. That's just the law of the universe and the way it works. So yeah, I don't think there really is a maintenance mode, but it's the awareness. It's the awareness in the beginning to say, okay, what results do I want? I want to be healthier. Okay, cool. Every day on the way to work, I stop and I get a coffee and I get a croissant. Okay, I'm very consistent in that behavior. What could I replace that behavior with? Maybe I'll just stop and get a coffee next time. Awesome. And then do that for a week, 2 weeks. Then eventually it gets to the point where maybe you make coffee at home. And then you're just switching and replacing habits. And I think it makes things seem a little bit more doable, right? It's not that you have to build in consistency. It's that you have to pivot to something that, to your point, is in alignment with the goals that you set.